government is turning to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. It has requested for a disbursement under the IMF's credit facility to help in the fight against the coronavirus. Ghana now has 68 coronavirus cases. Joining me in studio with more on this is Philip Namfuri, who has been following this keenly for us. Philip, so why the need to go for this loan?
Well, Daryl, like we discussed on our earlier bulletins, we are facing a severe health crisis. With the health crisis comes economic implications. With the economic implications comes dire negative consequences for a growing economy like ours.
Right.
We have a budget. We projected to get a certain amount of oil revenue for a certain amount of time. On the back of the virus and other tensions between two major oil producers, oil prices have dropped. International demand is going to go down. What's going to happen? Government needs money, needs financing to support economic activity and businesses, etc. Where can we turn to for such large amounts of cash? Not the commercial market. We need to turn to the International Monetary Fund, the Bretton Woods institutions. So we've gone to the IMF for what we call a rapid credit facility. Like the name suggests, rapid. Money is going to come in a more quicker manner as compared to other fund programs. Now, I also put together 8 different sets of infographics with regards to the information concerning this. Let's start with the basic one that looks at what the RCF is. Now, it says it's one of the IMF's lending instruments or fund facility programs. There are other ones that are in there. Standby arrangement, SBA, flexible credit line, precautionary liquidity line, extended fund facility. Now, what all these things mean are different programs for different needs. And for this need, Ghana's need, what we are going for is the rapid credit facility. The last time we were at the IMF, we went for the extended credit facility. That's the ECF. Now, I want us to move on to the next infograph that looks at the rest of the types of fund programs. And yeah, so what I mentioned, the extended credit facility, we also have the rapid financing instrument, trade integration mechanism, rapid credit facility, which we'll come to discuss, and a policy support instrument. I remember sometime the former Minister of Finance, Seth Tekpe, was advocating Ghana sign on to this policy support instrument. Let's move on to the next infograph that looks at the basic tenets of what the rapid credit facility program is. And it provides rapid concessional financial assistance with limited conditionality to low-income countries such as Ghana's. What do we mean by rapid? It's going to be disbursed in a quick manner. Concessional, soft terms, rather than going to the market to borrow high interest rates. And with limited conditionality, that's one thing we always argue about, the IMF conditionalities. What this does for you is that the conditionalities kick in after you've received the money. Other programs that we are used to, normally you discuss the conditionalities before the funds are disbursed, and most of the time they're disbursed in tranches. This time, according to the IMF's website and the explanation of this, we're going to receive this after the disbursement of these funds. Now, if we go on to the next piece of information on the infograph, it gives us I'll call it a snapshot of how things go. And let me just read for our listeners, for our viewers, I beg your pardon. In ex post conditionality, the country receiving aid agrees to conditions set by the donor or lender that they will carry out after they receive the aid. The RCF is available to PRGT. What it means is Poverty Reduction and Growth Trust eligible members that face an urgent balance of payment needs. Remember, I discussed what balance of payment means in the morning, where a full-fledged economic program is either not necessary, for instance, because of transitory and limited nature of the shock. The coronavirus is a transitory issue. We know it will pass. We don't know when, but we know that it will pass. Now, I want us to move on to the next one that discusses very key issues. And it says, while RCF financing takes the form of a one-off disbursement, there is a scope for repeat use. So when we're accessing this fund, there's a one-off shoot to us. But however, we are eligible to come on for repeat use. There are some conditions in there. Remember, during the extended credit facility, there were disbursements. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. Now, with regards to this RCF and what the IMF is saying, you cannot have more than 2 disbursements within a 12-month period. We'll come down to the numbers, and then that will give us a picture of how much the country will be benefiting. But if we move on to our next infograph, this one. So we can talk about the conditions for accessing this fund. And it says here, is determined on a case-by-case basis, taking into account the country's balance of payments needs, the strength of its macroeconomic policies. We've done some very good work on the macroeconomic fundamentals. Our capacity to repay the fund out of the amount of outstanding fund credit, and the members' record of past use of fund credit. So all these things will be assessed by the IMF authorities before government will be disbursed this fund. However, they're going to do that.
So that means we may not qualify for this kind of facility?
I think all things being equal, we may qualify. Reading from what I've seen here, we may qualify, because over the past, we've used our IMF funds judicially. To my large understanding, is the Eurobond issues that people have, that we go for Eurobond and come and use it to finance recurrent expenditure rather than capital. So I think with the fund issues, we are all well and good. And
as of now, we don't know how much Ghana is requesting.
Very good. So I want us to move on to one of the infographics that talks about the amount we are going to have. And if you look at Ghana's quota under the IMF, it's calculated in what we call SDR, that's special drawing rights, and the quota in there is 738 million. Now, special drawing rights is a basket of currencies. So you have the US dollar in there, you have the euro in there, you have the yen, the major currencies. How much is it in dollar terms? This is Ghana's quota, 998,572,237.22. So we're talking about close to $1 billion in terms of access to funds for the country. But what are the percentages of this access? We can have 50% per year, 100% of the quota on a cumulative basis, or we can have the standard initial disbursement of 25%. So if you strike 25% of $1 billion, we're looking at about give or take $250 million. But what about the financing terms of this? Zero interest rate. Very important. Grace period of 5.5 years. Grace period means that for the next 5.5 years, after we've disbursed you these funds, don't pay anything. Make sure by that time, we hope that this virus will be over. Hopefully. All be well and good. Yes, by God's will, because we really need this virus to be over. And then a final maturity of 10 years. So you are going to pay this loan over a course of 10 years. And 10 years is 20, we're looking at 2030. Some have predicted that there will be another virus in 2030, but God forbid it, we don't want that. So essentially, we have more or less up to $1 billion at our disposal, but it will depend on the negotiations our government, particularly fiscal and monetary authorities, have with the IMF on how much they're going to give us.
And this is like happening just when we thought our love affair with the IMF was over.
Yes. So over the course of several IMF programs, the issue has been with the conditionalities, because some have described these programs as following a certain procedure. So you cut back on expenses, etc. However, there have been some good aspects to IMF programs, because remember, during the crisis of the 1980s, when Ghana's economic system was in complete shambles, we had to fall on the Bretton Woods institutions, World Bank, IMF. And I would want Ghanaians to keep in their minds that no matter what happens, we are still part of the 189 members of the IMF, 190 if Andorra's application is approved in the subsequent months. But we are still part of the IMF. And this is the very reason why we must keep the relationship with them, because we need such things. Who saw this coming?
Yeah. Nobody saw this coming. And I also want to find out, what would this mean for our debt situation?
Okay, so for our debt situation, over time, our debt, external debt, we have the multilateral partners, bilateral, we have the international commercial borrowing, that's the Eurobonds we do, and then the export credit agencies. What we are taking is a multilateral debt, which when you look at the quantum of our external debt, is the largest. However, the commercial borrowing is what is good. That's the Eurobonds. That's what is growing. But with these, look at the arrow, zero interest rates. When we go for our Eurobonds, we don't have a lot. And if you factor in the considerations of finance ministers of Africa asking for a wipe of some of our debt, 44 billion in terms of our debt, so that it gives us room to handle this corona issue. If they come to an agreement on that, we should see less interest repayments as a country, all things being equal. But our debt, yes, may go up marginally in terms of multilateral debt. but multilateral debt is softer as compared to commercial debt.
And before we go, I just want us to touch on, since we are talking about monies to fight the coronavirus, the U.S. President Donald Trump and the Senate have agreed a massive economic relief package that's $1.8 trillion. Now, the package includes money to bail out industries that have been affected by this crisis. So how critical was it that they were able to pull this through?
I mean, Darryl, I know you followed President Trump's submissions. He's more concerned about the impact on the U.S. economy. This is an economic powerhouse. Can you imagine the U.S. coming to a standstill? Look at how the financial markets have whipsawed over the course of the time. $6 trillion is the amount in total stimulus that has been made available. This is supposed to kickstart things in the U.S. economy and make sure that when companies are going through tough times, they have access to cheaper credit, they have access to aid, particularly small businesses. And in Ghana, we need to think about our SMEs, which form a chunk of the market. So if things are going well in the U.S., all things being equal, we should see it percolate to other parts of the financial market system.
I don't know if we can pull up how the markets are reacting to this, but we've seen that the markets are reacting positively to this.
Yes.
That is what we need,
That's
isn't
what we
it?
need, yes.
And so for a country like Ghana, how should we react to this as well? We should be excited, right? Because this is an economy we benefit from. Just take a look at that. We're seeing that the markets are reacting positively, and that is good news, because in the past couple of weeks, it's been turmoil.
It's been red. Yeah, I mean, we should be excited. We have good relations with the United States of America. We have Ghanaians living and working there. We trade with them. But one thing that comes to my mind is the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act that we hear President Trump wants to do away with after it expires. I mean, we need to position ourselves to start taking. Remember, Kenya also had a discussion with the U.S. with regards to bilateral trade talks, and some are not happy that we should have gone as an African body rather than individual countries. So let's see how things go with regards to the U.S. economy. But right now, things are looking good. However, the critical issue here is slowing down the spread of the virus. The funds are there, but if the funds are there and nobody wants to do anything, wants to go out, they'll be there for use, but the negative impacts will still percolate. But we should hope that all things being equal, this bodes well for the economy.
And hopefully the IMF money comes through, and we're able to fight this coronavirus pandemic. Thanks very much indeed, Philip Namfori.